Welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the match preview with me, Ange Musgrove, and I'm joined by John Gibson. It's the FA Cup this weekend as Newcastle welcome Bournemouth to St James's Park for a nice 3 p.m. Saturday kickoff. But before we get into that, there's plenty to talk about. The small matter of Newcastle United's 4-3 victory over Leeds United. Myself and Mark Brothers have done the Monday show on a Thursday, so do go back and watch or listen to that if you haven't already. But it would be amiss of me not to ask John Gibson about his thoughts on that performance, on that result, on one of the most entertaining games we've seen in many a year at St James's Park. John, have you just about recovered?
I'm not certain that I have, actually, Andrew. It was breathtaking, it was balmy, it was absurd, and it was absolutely wonderful. It was all those things. 3 times behind in a 102nd minute winner. The first time Newcastle were ahead in the whole game. It was absolutely incredible. And well done, Leeds, for playing a significant part in it. But thank goodness we got there in the end, because we needed to keep that run going, and it was fabulous. And I thought it was a great tribute for this to happen on the day that it become clear about Kevin Keegan suffering from cancer. Only this time the 4-3, which was a typical result of his and the way he played, this was in our favour, not against us, which is great. But I just wanted to take time to say very fleetingly, Andrew, that my thoughts are very much like thousands of other Geordies with Kevin and with his family at this moment, because he is an absolute legend, both as a player and a manager at Newcastle United. And I had so much to do with him throughout all his time here. I did his shows. He did a deal with the breweries as a player when he come to Newcastle to top up his wages by a weekly appearance in social clubs, and I was contracted to do those appearances alongside him. Then I was part of the Magpie group, and so worked with him throughout his time as manager, and I've done loads since with him on stage. The last time being last year in the Tyne Theatre, when he appeared with Beardsley and Waddle and sold out the place. Over 1,000 people crammed in, devotees of his, to see him, and that's the sort of pull he had. And our thoughts are very much with him, and I know that Eddie Howe adores him and wants to play the way that Kevin played, and I therefore thought it was fitting that we had a game of that outrageous entertainment, and it's already been said by the locals to be the game of the season in the Premier League already, and we're only halfway through the season. But it was quite sensational, and thank goodness we came out the right side of it this time.
Yeah, certainly so, because as we're getting towards the end of that game, there was a sense of sort of belief, and then there was a sense of sort of frustration. It was just a whole host of emotions through the entirety of the game. What does winning a game in that manner do for a club like Newcastle United when things haven't been going smoothly? Been picking up results, and again, look, last night you can't say it was a polished performance, because it wasn't. You concede 3 at home, and actually, John, before you answer that question, the amount of texts I've had off people saying John Gibson said in his match preview, I don't want it to be 4-3 because that would shake the confidence. Well, someone was listening to you and went, we're going to give him that 4-3. But in terms of the confidence, I think it really will hopefully push Newcastle onto bigger and better.
Yes, without a shadow of doubt. I was ironic because I recalled that last night when I was lying in a darkened room trying to recover. I recall saying, don't give us a 4-3 because my nerves would be shredded by a 3. And they were for a great part of the evening. But when you turn out in the right way, it's a wonderful feeling at the end of the day. And a lot of it is relief as well. And there was a lot of things wrong, obviously, but there was obviously a lot of things right as well. And, like Eddie, better off, I suppose, concentrating on what is right. And it will do Newcastle a huge amount of good because they came from behind. And that's something they haven't been doing. They've been sacrificing leads, but they haven't come from behind to win a game, and they did here in a quite spectacular way. And that's going to rub off in a positive way on them as they go into the rest of the home games that we've got coming up.
And the first one being Bournemouth on
Yes.
Saturday. Given it was 112 minutes of football, it was energy sapping, it was emotionally draining. We saw the players at the end lying on the floor and then dancing moments after. I mean, how tired do you think they're going to be? Or is it a case that the adrenaline, John, and that emotion and that euphoria will drag them through, and come 3 o'clock on Saturday, any concerns about tiredness, they'll be well gone?
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer, it was emotionally sapping. It was everything. And that was just for spectators, by the way, never mind the players. But it was the right outcome. Can you imagine how emotionally sapping it would be if they'd led 3 times and then lost 4-3 in the last moments? It'll be more sapping on Leeds to try to pick themselves up from that than it is for us. It's going to be interesting. In what way will it impact on the match at the weekend? Well, it'll impact on the crowd, who will be in Walker's voice behind us, having just achieved that and having started to consistently win. It'll impact on that way in a very positive way on us. I mean, what it'll impact on the team is quite another matter, because in the FA Cup in the early rounds, Eddie's tries to spread the load anyway. And I know it's Premier League opposition, not one of the lower league teams. So there's that to take into consideration. But he likes to spread the load. So goodness knows what team he'll put out, because it could be absolutely anything after last night, apart from in certain positions where it cannot, like centre half, etc., where it cannot be absolutely anything because we haven't got the people available. And if there was a negative out of that wonderful win, apart from letting in the goals, and I'll come to that in a minute, it was losing Fabian Schar, of course, who's immaculate and who is a wonderful player and so silky smooth on the ball, and it looked a horrendous injury. And we're not knee deep in centre halves, so that was another blow.
It certainly was. I think my hope is that it gives them that momentum. It allows them to continue building that momentum into these important games still to come in January. We want to progress in the cup, and they do find that extra, 10, 12% on the back of a great win, like they had on Wednesday. It's interesting, the team, because like you say, usually, John, if it's the FA Cup first round that Newcastle have played in, you would imagine a few changes, but Eddie Howe hasn't actually got the depth to make those changes. There's no Emil Kraft, there's no Jamal Lascelles either, so you can't really play them in a game where I think he probably would have done had they been training for the last few months. And you mentioned there the centre backs. Obviously, Fabian Schar is out. In an ideal world, I think he'd want to rest Malik Thiaw after his first half performance, and obviously he was withdrawn at half time. It's been a few difficult weeks for Malik Thiaw. Obviously, he scored in the game before this, but he had a difficult time of it against Chelsea, and he's had a few sticky moments. Don't get me wrong, still absolutely brilliant, still Newcastle's best signing of the summer. But I think in an ideal world, if Eddie had the option, he wouldn't play him on Saturday. He'd probably look to rest maybe Lewis Hall as well. But the fact is that he hasn't got the options, particularly at the back, to make those calls. So you're probably going to see Tino at right back. I think there's a strong chance that you do see Malik Thiaw and Sven Botman if he feels Thiaw's not able to do that mentally because he's a bit fatigued, and him himself has spoken about a blackout. We may well have to see Lewis Miley deployed at centre-back.
Yeah, I mean, I think he will go, if he at all can, with Thiaw and Botman as his two centre-halves. You can't fiddle about with the full-back situations with Miley and Livramento and Trippier around coming back and Hall. You can get a little bit of leverage on your two full-backs, but I think your centre-halves automatically speak for themselves. And, Thiaw might want to mentally be taken out of things, and he has made a couple of mistakes recently. But he's a big lad, and he's a German international, and you've got to get over these things, and it's a test of character, and in you go. And I think I can't see him having much alternative to playing Chow and Botman as his two centre backs, because Burns nowhere near ready. So he hasn't got. He can find a little bit of wiggle room at fullback if he wants to.
I mean, I was intrigued, as I said on the show with Mark, that Eddie Howe actually said Lewis Miley's trained at centre back more than he has at right back. So that's why I think it might be a slight possibility. I think obviously we'll do the match preview ahead of Man City next week, John, but it is an important question when we're looking at the Bournemouth side, that having to play Chow and Botman is a bit of a concern looking ahead to Tuesday. You know, is Dan Burn going to be back in time for that City game? Because right now, his options at centre back are next to nil, other than the two that we've just spoken about.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Miley is just phenomenal, isn't he? I mean, he played in 3 positions in the one match against Leeds. He starts off at right back. He then plays midfield, and then he plays centre half, and plays them all, and is very accomplished in them all. And that is both his strength and his weakness. The weakness being that you can be so versatile. It costs you full England caps, as it did with Irving Nappis and as it did with Paul Madeley at Leeds, who's held up in that way. But it's wonderful for the club. And he is really, I mean, as I said before, he's the first name on the team sheet. You just look to see what position he's playing. But, you know, he will play in this game. I'm pretty certain of that. It's just where he plays.
If you could pick up the phone to Ross Wilson or Dave Hopkinson or even the owners, John, regarding the January transfer window. We know this month can be particularly difficult to navigate with inflated prices, and also, you know, the so-called Saudi tax as well doesn't help things. But I think it's fair to say, we're looking at Newcastle's options at centre-back, given, and at this moment, it's only an assumption, but it didn't look good for Fabian Schar. Lascelles is not back. We've mentioned Kraft, you know, Burns back involved, but he's not going to be ready, we don't think, for the next week or so. They need to go into this market and buy a centre-back, don't they? So what would be your message to those making those decisions when it comes to winning?
Please give Eddie the tools to continue doing the job. That's the simple message to Wilson and those above him, because we are on the bones, and we are in 4 competitions, and hopefully after Saturday we'll still be in 4 competitions. And that is an awful strain. And centre half, we're in dire straits, if you like. I mean, I don't think Lascelles is going to be part of our future in any shape or form, really. Byrne will come back into the picture, but we haven't got strength and depth at all, and we've got to get by somehow. And we're into 2 centre halves who we've talked about probably playing against Bournemouth. One of them is temporarily low in the snake's belly. That's Chow after recent mistakes. And the other one, Botman, is well short of match fitness, to be truthful. He's just coming back and could be shoved into a match and told, we want you to play the full hour and a half and extra time if it is extra time, because it's the FA Cup. So it is a very difficult time for Newcastle. And yes, we've got Miley able to cover. And certainly he could be sacrificed at right back because he could play Livramento there. But I mean, Miley could be in for Bournemouth at right back, centre half, or as the anchor in midfield, and with some reassurance that he'd do a good job in any of those positions.
I've mentioned there City coming up next week. Is there a case to ask, John, what is the priority? I mean, I feel dirty asking that question because I want Newcastle to go far in the FA Cup. It's that romantic competition that I'd love them to win, but also it is a first leg of a semi-final now, given all the injuries. Is there
I think the bigger game, the more dramatic game, the more confrontational game is Man City, because Bournemouth is in the FA Cup. We don't know how Bournemouth are going to treat the match. Are they going to make wholesale changes? We know they're not going to. They're going to be without their top player who signed off with a wonderful winning goal for them last night and is on his way to Man City, and they're going to be without Kluivert, who scored a hat-trick up here last season because he is got a knee injury and is undergoing surgery. But so what sort of team is he going to put out? I mean, it may not be strongest side, although if I was him, I would, because I would try to win the FA Cup if I was Bournemouth, because they're not going to win the league, and they're going to stay up. So let's try to win that. But yes, we don't know what side they're going to put out. But from our point of view, the more dramatic match is Man City, first and foremost, because we're at home and there's Wembley waiting, and therefore we've got to get a lead on next midweek. We've got to get a lead to take to Man City. We can't go to Man City behind, or we can't go to Man City, or wouldn't want to go to Man City on level pegging. We've got to take a lead down there. And this is 2 matches off the Wembley final, our third Wembley final in this competition. It's got to be bigger than the first hurdle of the FA Cup. As important as the FA Cup has been in Newcastle's history, it's got to be the bigger game. So yes, you are going to look at that at the same time when you're picking the side for Saturday.
Let us know in the comments, what is the priority? Is it the Cup on Saturday? Is it the semi-final against Man City? Or is it the Premier League? Just a reminder that this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. You can click the link in the podcast description box, get a discounted offer on your plan. There's no risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. One subscription can be used across 10 devices, and it's perfect to keep your electronic devices nice and safe. And we're also sponsored by fpro.com, the training map which can enhance your skills as a footballer. It goes through an app with drills built by UEFA coaches. We've got up to 60% off by heading over to fpro.com/EIBW20. Looking ahead, John, to the midfield, and again, it's all the questions about priority, quick turnaround, fitness, and momentum as well, because Joe Linton's in great form, Bruno's in great form, Harvey Barnes is in great form. So what does Eddie Howe do? Does he play them from the start and get the job done by half time, hopefully, and he keeps that momentum going individually and therefore collectively? Or does he pull them out and say, actually, we'll save you for Tuesday, but then risk that momentum suddenly stopping and starting from cold on Tuesday, so to speak, because they've not featured, at least from the start, on Saturday?
Fascinating decision, dilemma, if you like. And I think, by and large, Eddie's style is more that you pull them out and put them on the bench and use them if you need them, and give them a rest rather than start them and then bring them off. I think he does that more in early rounds of cups than he does the other way on, like, say, we're going to play them from the start and take them off after an hour. I mean, it's absolutely anybody's guess. He can't shuffle the wingers. He may well not have Elanga, but you've got Gordon, and you've got Barnes, and you've got Murphy for the 2 into 3. He's got that. It'll be interesting to see what he does about centre forward, having played Voltemade, which I always felt he would do, although I didn't want him to do. I wanted him to start with Wissa like you did. I always felt there was a good question that Voltemade would come in. He was Voltemade and Wissa was Wissa. They play totally different ways, and they did within that game against Leeds. You're not going to get the bang, bang, bang in the penalty area out of Voltemade. He had a lovely little layoff for one of the goals when he got it out of his feet rather well. But he doesn't play centre forward in the orthodox way. Which one of them will start against Bournemouth, and which one of them will start against Man City? I bet the same one doesn't start both those games, Andrew.
No, I think it'll be Voltemade on Saturday. I think, as you've said plenty of times over the last few weeks, I think Wissa makes Newcastle a more dangerous side, and I think given what's on the line on Tuesday, I think Johan Wissa will start there. So Voltemade will start his second game in succession for Newcastle United. I think in the midfield, it's so interesting. I think Bruno's a shoo-in, and then it is really a flip of the coin, because sometimes, as you've mentioned, he likes to make changes. Sometimes he doesn't. I do wonder, because they played 112 minutes against Leeds, whether that also has an extra bearing on things. Part of me, I've written down my midfield here, and I've written down Barnes, Ramsey, Bruno, Willock, and Gordon. Now, obviously, if Elanga is fit, that might change things. Murphy, obviously, he's got a bit of an injury that they're trying to manage as well, but I thought he came off the bench against Leeds, and he didn't do too much, but he stretched the game, which is what he was brought on to do. Got a few balls into the box. But then does Barnes go on the left? Murphy comes in on the right. It's such a fascinating dilemma. But I could see the midfield three certainly being Ramsey, Bruno, and Willock. The only question mark I would have is whether he maybe sticks Joe Linton in for Willock. But again, it's anyone's guess. And I'm fascinated to know what you guys watch and listen and think Eddie Howe will do in the midfield, because that's the key area. And it's all about momentum or rotation.
No, nobody ever guesses Eddie Howe correctly over the whole team, because it's physically impossible. And that is for Premier League games. When it comes to the FA Cup, where he shuffles a pack like a pack of cards, a Las Vegas gambler, it's even more impossible to second guess what he's going to do, because that's all you're doing. All you know is that Bruno will play because he refuses not to play. He's got such a big heart and he wants to do everything. And by Jove, isn't he leading by example this season? I mean, it was wonderful for him to take the penalty and be so cool over it when both our penalty takers, Gordon and Schar, were off the park, and he stepped up and tucked it away. And it was absolutely wonderful to see. And I think you're absolutely right. He will start. Who goes with him is a concern. I mean, there's also in that, we're talking about it could be Ramsey and it could be Willock. Theoretically, it could be Miley that goes into the midfield to allow Livramento to play right back. And if he plays his two centre-halves, then Miley could well go into midfield and play in the midfield.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I haven't got Miley in that midfield because I do think if he plays, it will be in some sort of defensive element. So whether it's given Lewis Hall a rest and Tina goes to the left and Miley starts at right back, but I still wouldn't rule out Malik Chow not actually starting and Lewis Miley playing at centre back. But again, I mean, I could ask you now, John, to name your team, and I think you might struggle. But come on, let us know what your team would be. What would you do?
Well, it would always be my team rather than Eddie's team, because nobody knows Eddie's team by Eddie. I mean, I would start with Pope. I would probably play Livramento and the two centre halves. The only two we've got, Chow and Botman, and probably go with Hall, hoping that he gets the run of misplaced passes out of his system and does a job in there. If that was so, I would then go with Bruno and Miley, because I would have to play Miley somewhere because I love him so much, and he's a young lad and he's not overworked this season, so I think he could play again and play again on Tuesday. I would play Miley and Ramsey probably with Bruno, and I think he'll go with Voldemort. I would play Risa because I'm not too keen on the way Nick plays the centre forward role, but I think he will play, as you said, centre forward. And I don't mind on the wings. He can do what he wants to do. Harvey Barnes, I just want to pay a compliment to him because he has been truly magnificent. I mean, until now, there's been a question mark, until this season, a question mark against Harvey Barnes, saying, has he been worth his money, 39 million or something paid for him? Because in the main, he has been seen, certainly by the manager, as an understudy for Anthony Gordon. He hasn't been seen as an automatic first on the team list player picked automatically to start. He's come in for when Anthony Gordon's been rested or whatever. He has now scored 9 goals this season for Newcastle United with his 2, and he has swept away doubts about whether he is value for money. And I would suggest, not against Bournemouth, because that might not be seen as a priority match, but I would suggest when it comes to the crunch matches, Barnes is the first winger on Eddie Howe's team sheet, ahead of Murphy and ahead of Gordon and ahead of Elanga. The first winger to be picked on form because he can finish so well, and the other wingers don't finish. The other wingers aren't natural finishers, whether that's Murphy, Elanga, or Gordon. And so he's gone from being Gordon's understudy and maybe not worth the money we paid for him to be the number 1 winger choice, in my opinion.
Well, let us know in the comments your thoughts on the wingers situation. Great to see Harvey Barnes do what me and John have always said he's capable of doing, and just being that match winner. And I think now the question is more about whether Gordon can get to that level, and can the two play together going forward? And we'll only learn the answer to that as time goes on. 3 questions to go then, John. First off, what does the FA Cup mean to you? We've talked about priority. I think for many it is that cup that we'd all like to see Newcastle United win. But priorities aside and all of that, I mean, what would it mean to you to see Newcastle lift the FA Cup?
Oh, I mean, because of my age, I was a Newcastle supporter and a Newcastle United reporter in the golden days when the FA Cup was everything. Before you had Europe, before you had the Champions League and all the secondary cups and the one we won, the first cup in '69, the FA Cup, and much more than the League Cup in these days, the FA Cup was the ultimate prize with the ultimate razzmatazz stage at Wembley, where television started about 9 o'clock in the morning and went on to about 2 hours after the game, non-stop. It was the moment. And I always remember working. Yes, I watched Newcastle win the cup 3 times in 5 years as a little lad. But I then worked with Jackie Milburn, become a close friend of Jackie. And Jackie always said to me, Gibbo, the league didn't hold the same fascination with us. We could have, if we'd been one-eyed about the league, the side that Jackie played in, we could possibly have won the league. But we liked the wonderful drama and day out and royal occasion that the FA Cup at Wembley was. And the minute that started, our league form tapered off because we wanted to win on the great stage. You can win the league on a Wednesday night in Stoke, but you can't. You win the FA Cup as you now win the League Cup, and we've found to our pleasure, you win that on a great day at Wembley. And the FA Cup has historically been the centerpiece of English football for well over 100 years. We've won the competition 6 times and appeared in 7 other finals. That is what the FA Cup has meant to Newcastle United. Much more than the League Cup. That is the newfangled thing for us all, and aren't we grateful, and don't we love the League Cup, and don't we want to go to the final yet again 3 times in 5 years or whatever it would be if we got to the final of that. But for older fans, the FA Cup is quite something special, and always has been. The greatest knockout club competition the world has ever seen, without a shadow of doubt. And therefore, to do well in that, which means beating Bournemouth to start with, but to do well with that and to go to a final of the FA Cup at Wembley, as we've done twice in the League Cup, and pray we do it again this season, would be absolutely stupendous for everybody. But for the older fans who were brought up in at a time when the FA Cup was God, it would be phenomenal. And that's why I urge Newcastle, when we're playing the FA Cup, to treat it seriously and to try to do the business and to doff our cap at history, because that is the competition above all others where we have a history.
Certainly so. I know at the beginning we mentioned Kevin Keegan there. I just wanted to really get a kind of a deeper message of support from you, John, for Kevin after that diagnosis of cancer. As you said, it was revealed a couple of hours before the game against Leeds, and a fitting tribute to the man that game ended the way it did. Horrible news. We wish him all the best. Just a kind of a message of support from yourself for Kevin.
We do. I mean, what Kevin Keegan brought to this club is quite phenomenal. I mean, he could easily be said to be the father of the modern day Newcastle United, because he twice resurrected us from ashes and turned us into a club of pride again. When he came as a player, we were in the 2nd division. We couldn't draw flies. We weren't filling the stadium. We were going nowhere fast. And we signed a bloke who was the current captain of England, who had twice won the Ballon d'Or, who had won the European Cup with Liverpool, had won everything with Hamburg. We signed him and brought him to Newcastle, and within 2 magical years, we won promotion back into the big time. He went off to retirement in the way that only Kevin could, lifted from the centre circle at St James's Park in a helicopter and ushered off to Gosford Park Hotel. The drama, the romance, that's what he was. 8 years or so later, he came back to manage Newcastle United, again in the depths of despair. We were eventually 1 game from going in the old 3rd division, and this club has never sunk as low as that before. We've never played in the 3rd tier ever in the club's history. We were facing that, and he took us from that to be runners up in the Premier League twice, 2 successive years. The second year he left halfway through, but it was his team, and he did it with a brand of football which we are totally proud of, because the whole of the country loved Newcastle United. We were the club everyone wanted to watch. Yes, we didn't win a trophy, but we went from nothing to runners up in the Premier League twice with fabulous players and signing fabulous players. He was Pied Piper. Everybody wanted to follow Kevin. He got people to come to Newcastle United who initially didn't want to come, until he sat them down and talked to them, and then they couldn't get here quick enough. That is what he's done for Newcastle. I worked with him, as I said earlier in this, throughout all his time at Newcastle and since with him. He is very charismatic. He has done so much for this club. And our thoughts are with him that he can get through this. He's always been a fighter. We're looking for him to get through this, to recover from this, and to see him at St James's Park at a match, and me hopefully to share stage with him again. We wish him all the best. We know how serious this is and how serious it is for his family. But his family is much bigger than literally his family. It's all of Tyneside. It's all of the Newcastle United fan people, and the people of Liverpool, and the people of Hamburg. And the footballers that adored him, from Terry Hibbert, who was his right-hand man at Newcastle United, to Peter Beardsley, who's adored him to this day and speaks to him every week on the telephone. So he's going to be feeling the love sweeping down the Tyne and down to where he is in hospital. And it's undiluted. And as I say, our thoughts, he was always a positive guy. His glass was always half full rather than half empty, and it'll be half full now. So we're looking for him to recover from this, and we're looking for him to come amongst us again in the very near future. We're not looking at the negative thing, we're looking at the positive thing. He was always a positive guy, he remains a positive guy. It is a tough fight, possibly the toughest fight he's had, but we're with him on it, and we're hoping for the outcome to be what we all wish it to be.
The best on to Kevin and his family at this difficult time. John, just to sign off then, as always, how is the game on Saturday going to go? Newcastle going to progress?
Yes. I mean, we don't know what the team's going to be. We know what the mood's going to be like. It's going to be buoyant in the dressing room because we're winning. We're back to winning regularly, and that's so important. It's going to be buoyant on the terraces because they've watched Newcastle win games, and they've saw the most dramatic way to win ever on Wednesday. The mood's going to be terrific. Bournemouth have been on a very poor run of results until they beat Spurs in midweek, and they've stopped that somehow. They can play very attractive football. They can score goals. If there is a worry for me, Andrew, it is the defence, and not just because of Schar's injury. But at home recently, we drew 2-2 at home to Spurs and 2-2 at home to Chelsea, and then let in 3 goals against Leeds. There's 7 goals in in those 3 particular matches we let in. It cost us 4 points against Spurs and Chelsea, and it almost cost us another 2 points against Leeds, because if we had drawn it would have been 2 points. It's gone down the drain. So it has been on the cusp of being very dangerous to us, this ability to let in goals. Yes, we had a clean sheet against Palace, but we haven't been doing that for a long time. We must somehow try to shore up this defence and get through. But I'm taking us to win. All I'm saying is, having been a bit nervous about 4-3 shredding me nerves, don't take me into extra time on Saturday. I don't know if I could stand it any longer. Let's do the job in 90 minutes. What's the score going to be? Couldn't care less. Goal difference doesn't come into this competition. We don't have to beat a side 4-0. If we beat them 4-3, it's exactly the same as 4-0, in the next round. So I'm just looking for us to win, and I believe we will win.
Yep, I think we'll win as well. I mean, we've got to the end of the show without mentioning the fact that Bournemouth also scored a very late winner, 95 minutes, but it was their star man who's no longer their star man because he's off to Manchester City. So all being well for him, he won't be featuring Semenyo on Saturday because he'll be at City. So we'll probably get to see him on Tuesday unless he's cup tied. I'm hoping he's cup tied because he's a brilliant player.
Yes, he is. I know he is cup tied, which is great.
Fantastic. But yes, I mean, I did say the previous question was the last one, but finish on this, John. I mean, does Bournemouth's result against Spurs, obviously that impacts their mood positively because they'd gone 11 games without a win. They'll be feeling the same kind of euphoria with a late winner and hoping for the same impact that Newcastle take into this game with also a winner at the death.
Yeah, yes, it'll impact them, but it'll not impact them enough. The guy that got them is gone. And that was just one win, and it was a relief because they want league points, because they want to stay in this division, and quite rightly so. This is the Eddie Howe derby. Eddie Howe's a legend at both clubs. He's certainly a legend at Bournemouth because he took, regardless of what he did as a player, he took them from the brink of non-league football to Premier League regulars as a manager. He is the greatest manager Bournemouth have ever had, and I know they've had Harry Redknapp and people like that, but he is their greatest manager. He is a legend at Newcastle because he won the first domestic trophy in 70 years for us, and has appeared in 2 Wembley finals, and has got 2 Champions League qualifications on his record book. Whatever happens to him now or in the future, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it can't take away from what he's already done for Newcastle. But while he's got affection for both clubs, he's got to put Bournemouth to the book on Saturday. And he'll want to put Bournemouth to the book on Saturday because he's now an adopted Geordie and he's now in charge of the black and whites. And I think he will put them to the book on Saturday. And that's the result I'm looking at, that we go through and we'll be looking at what the draw might be.
Yeah, fingers crossed that is the case. Thanks, John, for popping on and providing the match preview. I'm going to sign off. I'm going to go and warm up because for whatever reason, whoever controls the aircon in this office decided to put it on like -12, despite it already being about -12 outside. I'm absolutely bloody freezing. So hopefully this episode has warmed you guys up. It hasn't quite me. I'm going to get a nice brew now. But thanks to John as always. Thanks to you guys watching and listening. And I'll see you guys very soon.